Hello, welcome to Better Conversations Live. Glenn, you're here today.
Hello.
If you're joining us live, drop a hello in the chat. We are getting better at catching those and saying hello. If you're watching the replay, pop your comments and questions and hellos in the discussion below. And we're here on Tuesdays. We've managed most Tuesdays, I think, this year at 1 p.m. UK time, and we're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course betterconversations.live. You'll also get to us that way. Glenn?
Oh, over to me. Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay, cool. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I think is this the point where I start going through the times again, or should I just introduce myself? It's been a while.
It's been a while. Well, introduce yourself first and then give us your best voice for the times.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds like a good approach. So hi, everyone. Welcome. If you're live, really cool that you could join us. If you're watching this, the recording as it will, hello anyway. It's really cool to have you with us. I'm Glenn Martin. I'm a talent acquisition project manager. I work largely with startups and scale-ups to help them hire the best talent as they grow. And in terms of the times, we are live 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central European Time, 5:30 p.m. IST. I don't know what that is.
India Standard Time.
India Standard Time, and 10 p.m. Australia.
East Coast, yes.
East Coast time.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
There we are.
Yay.
A little bit rusty.
That's right. It's the test, Glenn.
Failed.
You got the hardest bit over with. There we go. Today we're going to be talking about course correcting the C-suite on talent. Glenn and I have a lot of conversations around the decisions that are being made in leadership and so on. And so we wanted to share some of those perspectives, but also Glenn has a course called Talent for Leaders, which we'll share with you, talk about a little bit more later on. So this is kind of a little bit of a window, isn't it, Glenn, onto what you might get on the course, why that's important. Do you want to just maybe give a little snippet of what the course is about, and then we can talk about what we're going to cover off today?
Yeah, I mean, it does. This feels like an extension of many conversations we have around kind of talent and, kind of the sort of approach and some challenges that kind of C-suite leaders, whether you're a co-founder, whether you're, kind of like part of a scale-up senior leadership team. So yeah, the course itself is really about offering you, the individual that comes on the course, the opportunity to understand your kind of role, your responsibility, the opportunities as a leader when it comes to talent acquisition and recruitment. So talent acquisition and recruitment, two phrases are used interchangeably. They mean the same thing, just for clarity. So it's really about empowering you to understand how you can create great candidate experiences that will really enhance the opportunities for you to hire amazing people. And I say amazing people in the context of amazing people to your business. Everybody's amazing, but you have a specific requirement as a business, and the people that you hire are amazing to you. So that's the course itself, and it's underpinned with, I think, certainly education elements around, kind of understanding the marketplace, the current marketplace that we're in right now, post-pandemic. It gives you some really structured frameworks to implement into your business to help you really scale your kind of recruitment workflows and candidate experience. And equally as well, it challenges your thinking around what recruitment actually is, and hopefully take you from a viewpoint of recruitment as a service to recruitment as a valued business partner. So that's the kind of summary of the course.
And what I like about that, Glenn, is it's not separating out the recruitment from to a part of the business and you have no involvement with. But as leaders, you actually need to play a much more active, proactive role. Yep, that's the course. That's the course. Much more proactive role in designing experiences, and really today this is the first of 3 sessions, right? We're gonna and today we're talking about talent brand and value proposition. So hopefully we're going to scratch below the surface in terms of what that what you could look at doing differently, and why it's important to do those things. And just for clarity, so this is part 1, and as I said, we're going to cover talent brand and value proposition. Next week we're covering recruitment or HR. Who do you hire first?
That will be a contentious one, that is for sure.
Yes, I get asked that question, not so much recruitment, but when do I hire an HR person? And I think this is the question before even that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because very often that might fall to the COO, and who's wearing lots of different hats, basically. Anything doesn't fall in neatly into CTO or CEO. And then the week after next, we're going to be covering, you're going to share with us how we deliver amazing candidate experiences.
Yeah, looking forward to that one as well. Yeah, that'd be a great one.
Yeah.
So important anyway, but as we'll get into, so critical in the current market, that's for sure.
And I just to come to recruitment, there are certain parts of business that are, should we say, always a little bit behind trend or patterns or change, right? And but designing experiences are so key. We do it for our customers. Because you've got to, that's how you acquire customers, but we're not so hot when it comes to doing it for candidates and talent, right?
Exactly that. Well, therein lies one of the perhaps perceptions and challenges, Sehaam, is that we with customers and consumers, we're like, wow, that particular new customer acquisition will lead to X amount of profit, sell on referrals, etc. But when we come to individuals that we're interested in hiring, we often don't view them in the same way and the same level of value. There's this frame of reference of almost it's a functional thing. It's more of a, we need to hire this person to allow our business to do X. And my view is always that individual will deliver massive value for your business. You should be viewing them in the same way that you view your customers. View it as a new customer acquisition, because ultimately the value they'll bring, the referrals they could well bring, are equally as value. It's just a different side of the business, right, as it were.
Well, and what they're going to give to the team, right? How generous they're going to be with their ideas, how collaborative they're going to be. Does that make it possible for your team to do more when you need to scale, when you're under pressure? I mean, these are the realities, aren't they? And there's so many times I hear about leaders sort of struggling with someone who's not a great fit for whatever reason, but or a decision was made to hire someone that they sort of in an effort to give more autonomy to other people have sort of completely stepped away from it. And there's a balance to find. You can't completely let go, and it's generous that you want to give more autonomy to other team members, but you've got to think about the consequences of doing that, and does it put you in a position of having to kind of go back a few steps, or lose time or opportunity, right? So
100%. Yeah.
So talent brand and value proposition, can you define those for me a little bit?
Well, I wrote it down because you do have to be really clear on this. There are a number of kind of different definitions out there. So first and foremost, you need to understand when you're looking at the, should we say, the kind of employment market, and then looking at individuals you want to hire, there are two brands. There's the employer brand and the talent brand. So people are like, okay, well, surely they're the same. The two distinctly different things, right? So your employer brand is how you, as an employer, promote your company as a place to work. So think of it from a marketing perspective. That's the push, right? Mm-hmm. So that's your website, that's your adverts, that's your social, and that's the push element. That's what you want to convey to the market. The talent brand is the kind of social, totally public version of your employer brand that you typically don't control. Right. So that's what people think, feel, and share about your company as a place to work. So two distinctly different things there. So whilst the employer brand is something you can invest in, and a lot of companies do now understand the value of employer branding. That's a more generalization. Companies have always understood the importance of employer brand, but I think the investment in it,
comms, exactly. Right? That's exactly, PR and comms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the employer brand is possibly the easier piece to structure, put together, and plan and deliver, because it's a marketing strategy essentially. But one element within that I often find companies don't quite understand. They don't not get it right, but perhaps they don't index enough on it, is the interaction. So once you've pushed out your kind of advert, once you've essentially created your website, and once you've started to post on social, are you then monitoring the interaction on that? And if you are, what's important to you and how are you indexing it? So that's the employer brand piece. The talent brand is a whole different organic ballgame, right? Starting with places like Glassdoor, right? So so many companies I work with, they're like, oh, we've had this bad review on Glassdoor. It's rare that a company will have a pristine Glassdoor kind of set of reviews, because what we're dealing with here is kind of people, how they feel, what they've experienced. And if you're not really putting in a recruitment workflow that underpins a really positive candidate experience, chances are you may look at your employer brand and think, we're doing a lot of good work there. That's brilliant.
Looks great.
Actually, but your talent brand is suffering, and you're not even aware of it. So this is the piece that I always say to companies, like, your employer brand piece is something you can control. Definitely put some budget behind that. The talent brand piece is the piece that you need to really be very mindful of, very intentional around. So even, things like Glassdoor, if you get a bad review, get on there and respond to it. Acknowledge it, own it. Because ultimately that is a sign of a company that really understands that every interaction is important. I mean, back to that analogy around the consumer, right? If a consumer complained about your product, you'd be straight on it trying to address that, wouldn't you? So why is it any different when it comes to individuals that potentially would want to work for you or you could hire?
Right. And the thing about Glassdoor is it's not just a homogenous, this company. It's, the commentary about leadership in general. When I've looked at them, I'm fascinated by all the pieces of information there. And certainly, how liked is the CEO? Okay, kind of interesting. But it's the comments about the culture, the leadership culture, management culture, especially 100%. For startup or scale up, whether you've become really cliquey, and there's an in group and everyone else is outside that. Those are the things, and you can't control them as easily because they are so deeply connected to the reality of your day-to-day culture. So if you've got stuff going on that's chronically wrong, or unhealthy within your organization, that's not a clean sweep. Even going and sort of picking up on someone's comment, right? Someone's negative feedback ain't going to fix it.
Exactly. It's interesting. So coming back to the employer brand, the push, right? The push notifications, if you will, the marketing. If you put together a load of really nice kind of videos around, kind of your people, et cetera, or your culture environment, and you're posting those out. If I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, cool. I can see the content, understand the message they're trying to convey. Yeah. Why are none of their team members commenting on this post? Why is nobody saying, oh yeah, I completely, that's my experience, my colleague X in that video is awesome to work with, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this piece around, you can create a really nice video and people can say pretty much exactly what you need them to say on that video. But from a kind of talent brand perspective, the organic piece around, how people perceive that, there's a disconnect, right? So it's kind of like, so great video, shot really well, nice graphics, nice image, nice punchy,
very
snippy, very slick. None of their team members have shared it, liked it, commented on it, anything. So there's something to kind of really focus on there.
Well, and even if you ask them to, it feels really painful and hard to do that, right? So that's a clear signal. If you haven't got an employee survey or a morale survey, that's a clear one that if they're not doing that naturally because they feel so strongly that this is a great organization, that should be a signal, right?
Equally as well. Content can come from your people. They can be sharing stuff that actually is really resonating with them. Doesn't need to be part of a really strategic marketing plan. So that's something else I look for when I think about kind of partnering with companies is kind of, are there any comments from their people? And it's, to your point, is how proud are they? And I get it. Not everybody's, comfortable with commenting on social media. The perception of, kind of talking about your business, some people may cynically deem that as, kind of a little bit contrived. But if there's multiple posts from people, that's not contrived. That's individuals in the business willing, wanting, and ready to promote. So I just wanted to just circle back to one thing around the talent brand, the kind of social element, the piece that is a lot more organic. And I often get asked, okay, cool. Well, how do I measure that? How do I start to understand beyond perhaps kind of Glassdoor? Kind of that's a singular platform. So if I'm on there, kind of great, but what else can I do? And there's typically sort of three measures that I look for or advise to look for. And that's first and foremost, like kind of your social media follower quality, not quantity. So not how many people are following you just because somebody's clicked on it, like, oh yeah, we'll follow them, great. It's the quality and how you measure quality. So depending on your product or service, the types of people that you would want to be interested in your brand, and then equally how much they're actually interacting with the posts that you're putting out. Because ultimately, if you've got 30,000 followers and less than 5% are interacting, and they're people that are completely not relevant to your business or proposition, or you'd never hire, is quality the right word? I guess it's just understanding the kind of meaningfulness of those kind of interactions. But it's often referred to as kind of social media follower quality. Then there's the piece around your talent response rate. So when you're kind of when you're posting jobs, when you're talking about opportunities, what's the response rate? What's the interaction rates, as it were, with those types of posts? Are you getting anything other than, essentially everybody in the business just clicking like? So there's that piece. And then I think this is the piece that's probably a little bit more challenging to measure. But if you take a longer term view on it, and say, for instance, you segment your planning into kind of months or quarters, is the quality of the applicant you're receiving getting better? Because that relates to the messaging you're putting out, how you're framing the opportunities within your business, your culture, your environment, the type of thing you're offering. Is the applicant quality getting better? Are you getting better quality of applicants relating to the job posts, the values, or are you still getting just kind of speculative, ad responses? So those are the three that I would, in that talent brand piece, I would advise companies to kind of think about and certainly monitor. How you do that, obviously, I mean, it's kind of, there's a number of different ways to splice it. And so certainly in terms of social media quality, depending on your kind of applicant quality, you need to measure what matters to your business.
So question for you. As a leader, how do I stay on top of all that? Like those different elements. What should I be staying on top of?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that's a team effort. That's a lot of work for one person, and certainly if they're a senior leader, that's quite incredible, really. I would look to segment that up, and again, it comes back to measure what matters, right? So where are you on your journey? Are you kind of pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B? Kind of what's important to you at that stage of your growth. And then it's a collective effort. It's a team effort. So some of that may come under, I don't know, your kind of analytics team. You could wrap some of that social media kind of data analysis into the kind of, the analytics teams as a kind of add-on. I think in terms of applicant quality, well, then clearly that's something for kind of the recruitment team to own. But you can, as a group, so senior leadership and kind of recruitment, discuss that on a quarterly basis, and so you're informed about it. And ultimately as well, you can put certain kind of measures so say, for instance, when a particular individual was presented to a hiring manager within your business, you can put some measurements on there to sort of say, okay, well, applicant quality of this individual is X, Y, and Z. So it's almost a metric that the hiring team start to understand. So when they start to see a 7 and an 8 from the previous 3s and 4s that they've seen, they're starting to see that applicant quality is getting better. That's not to say it's a perfect mechanism, but it's a way of starting to illustrate to the business that change in applicant quality. So that's not directly sourced individuals or anything along those lines. That's applicant quality.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so my follow-up question to that is, what's the conversation that leaders should be having? What does that sound like? And I know you said quarterly, but that almost sounds like if you're on a recruitment drive, you probably want to be talking about those things more frequently than quarterly. Should they not be part of your regular update and narrative and exchange with your team members? Because if we're talking about it being a team effort, and you're asking me as a team member to help with some of that, I kind of want to know some of that information, right? I'd love to know.
100%. Yeah, you're right. I probably should have changed that to almost like a quarterly review where you get together in terms of talking about everything. But you're absolutely right. The consistency of that language, that narrative is key to everybody in the business understanding and owning, the recruitment part of the business, which is super important. And certainly depend on. Sorry, you're going to say?
Well, and also because if we talk about the talent brand, the part that you can't control, if you think about where some of that those feelings and or misgivings or whatever are coming from, they're potentially coming from your own team, from within a degree or two of you as a leader, right? So or someone posted something there who was a member of your team at some point. So there are touch points that are actually really close, and I think that's what I find quite fascinating about if you're not engaging and not understanding what is the conversation, and that can be hard as a leader, because some people, team members don't necessarily want to share stuff with you, but that is down to you as a leader to have to at least be inviting discussions that sort of cross levels, right, and are not held back, because that's not for leaders to know, or that's only for the team on the ground to talk about.
Agreed. I think it's also about changing the questions as a leader, changing the questions you ask your hiring team. So going from how many CVs did you get, which is just a quantifying, to, what's the best profile you've received this week and why? And how are you measuring the kind of quality of your interview process? What have you agreed with kind of recruitment to measure the quality and the benchmark of that particular process? And are you happy with your own kind of approach to interviewing? Do we need to change it slightly? Because we started here, do we need to review that? So it's opening up discussion, as opposed to how many CVs did you get? Okay, if you get 5 there, that should lead to 2 to 3 interviews. Hopefully, it's that is quite a kind of legacy approach to recruitment. And this is at the top of the show when I said service, and moving it from a service mindset to a valued business partner. As a leader, you play an important part in changing that narrative. It comes from you. So, don't underestimate the impact of the questions you're asking, and how that might inform the interview process. Because ultimately, if you say, "Oh, well, how many CVs did you get?" the hiring manager may get or that particular colleague hiring manager may get the impression that really it's just about hiring somebody.
Right.
And we're time pressured, so it's just about hiring somebody. But if you ask about the quality, it changes the focus to, are we going to be super happy with this hire?
Right.
And how are we measuring that?
Right.
So it's an interesting change of mindset, that's for sure.
It's an investment in rather than seeing it as a just feed in candidates. We'll sift through them and then we'll pick one. That's a very old style way of doing it, isn't it? This is more about, and it really ties into creating those experiences, which we're going to get to in part 3. What about, so something that we've talked about is going beyond your news. You see a lot of people posting their news, which is fantastic, about their growth or clients they've won, or funding that they've secured.
Which is all great news,
Pardon?
It's all great news. It's all positive stuff, definitely.
Yeah. But we all know the story behind may be quite different, right?
Yeah, I think utilizing good news stories to kind of promote your employer brand is a good thing, right? It's useful to kind of tie opportunities with good news stories. I think that where that good news story and the opportunity and the impact of that dissolves is if the first interaction with that business when you register your interest in an opportunity is really poor. And really poor by mean no acknowledgement, no feedback. Those 2 things alone will kill any feel-good factor around that good news story and what inspired that person and kind of acted as a catalyst for them to register their interest. And that links into ultimately your kind of recruitment workflow, but your candidate or individual experience, the experience that person has. And it's equally the same in terms of the employer brand, right? If you push out a load of stuff, somebody, kind of comments on your post and they get 0 interaction back, it's done. That's game over.
Right.
So that interaction, that first contact is super important. And the language that you use in that kind of first interaction and first contact is super important. If it's just a, hi, Sehaam, thank you for your application. We will be back to you in 72 hours. Right. Doesn't feel as good as that post that you put out around this growing business that's super, super innovative, and they've got some great opportunities. Bunch. Yeah, we're super positive, we're inclusive. But actually, if you want to apply for a job here, you're just going to get a standard answer.
Automated email reply.
Which look, in fairness to in-house recruitment teams, they can't possibly respond personally to every single application immediately or super, super quickly, right? But actually, that doesn't mean to say you can't follow up.
Right.
You can't follow up.
And you can add some personality to that reply, right? That is on brand. You can make it speak in the language, of your culture, right? Whether that's casual, friendly, or jokey, or right, depending on your business, you can cut it different ways.
If you're just going into your application tracking system, your ATS, right, going click, 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 bulk email, template, send, you're creating momentum and a talent brand awareness that it's just a standard process. There's nothing really new there. So there's a disconnect. You may see a really great, shiny, kind of like employer brand, but actually the reality is it's like everybody else. It's just an application kind of like black hole, essentially.
Right.
So,
and that makes getting emotionally attached to that company even harder, right? Then you as an employer become just on the list of job applications that individual has kind of put out there, right? Not helpful.
And as a leader, you need to understand the impact of this in a post-pandemic, very competitive market now. As a leader, if you think that just kind of doing a standard kind of recruitment process will be sufficient enough for you to kind of attract the types of individuals you want to hire, you're grossly mistaken. And that's only the individuals that are showing interest in your business. That doesn't even kind of take into account the passive market of all those people that you would want to hire that aren't even actively looking at the moment.
Right.
I don't even know about your business. Have no clue whatsoever. So, if you focus purely on just the active market, as we call it, you're only seeing a small percentage of the potential individuals that you could then hire.
And I think a lot of companies also sort of ramp up what they're putting out there about their brand when they are on a recruitment drive or when they are on a funding round, right? And then but the opportunity is missed of actually thinking much longer term, which is like, okay, these people might not engage with us today or tomorrow, but they may engage with us in the future. And the more that we make that attractive and easy to connect with us, the easier it is when we need people. When we need funding to get it, right? Because our brand is strong out there.
Yeah. If the perception from a talent brand perspective is that you'll only get interaction from that company when they're hiring, they've no interest in talking to you when they're not hiring, that's not a good position to be in, because my view is always you should always be looking for those interactions. And always be open to those conversations. And I look to coach senior leaders to set aside time to actually have kind of introductory conversations that are almost outside of the interview process, because they're equally as valuable. You've set a real kind of, you created a connection, you've set a marker with an individual that potentially could lead to you hiring them a little bit later on down the line, because they may not actively be looking at the moment. But they could well be open to a conversation. Right. And if you think, well, if they're not actively looking, then what's the point in having a conversation? Well, to be fair, you're going to be one step behind the other business that does do that. So when Sehaam contacts you in 3 months' time and said, oh, hi, I'm kind of looking, and I came to you first because we had a really great conversation about 3 months ago. I just wanted to see where the business was. That is gold.
Mm, mm, mm.
Or as opposed to, that company's just contacted me. Wasn't I supposed to have a conversation with the C-suite 3 months ago, and they just didn't bother? I'll pause on that. So it does have real benefit. And this is the thing, it's coaching leaders to understand that recruitment isn't just the process. It's not just we're hiring now, so therefore all of our efforts should be now. It's a continual thing that you need to keep momentum behind. And I think I spoke to a client I'm working with recently, and he repeated a stat to me, which I thought was super interesting. He'd read I think it was a McKinsey report, and he was like, given where they are now in terms of their kind of funding and stuff, 30% of his time at his operational level should be allocated to recruitment and hiring. And he was kind of super surprised by that. And I said to him, that's because your frame of reference for recruitment, and then thinking about 30% of your time, given your current frame of reference with recruitment, probably doesn't look that appealing.
Well, that looks like I'm stuck in back-to-back interviews.
Exactly that, which he'd been doing, right? So, but actually 30% of his time investing in having really meaningful, good conversations that result in great hires, that's a worthwhile investment of 30% of your time.
Absolutely, an investment is the right word. But I've got a question for you.
Okay, go.
Diverse talent.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. And when we talked about it yesterday, I was like, oh man, I mean, this is like such a big subject with so many different kind of pillars within it. I was like, well, where do I start with that? And actually, thankfully, I did a workshop last year with a really cool cohort of kind of startups at different levels. And I thought, I'll ask them, what's the single biggest challenge you have in, or either perceived challenge or challenge you directly have in terms of hiring diverse talent? And the top three reasons were, and the top reason was the recruitment process. The second was actually attracting diverse talent. And then the third was actually advertising. And then there was things like location, budget, cost per hire, role requirements, etc. But it was really interesting to me that their perception was that their recruitment process was possibly the biggest challenge for them, essentially, kind of recruiting diverse talent. Whereas for me, it would be first around that attraction. How are you positioning yourself as an employer worth being considered? That would probably be more of a, personally for me, more of a priority. And then that lends itself to, so we discussed this yesterday, which I thought was a really, really cool analogy, right? If you're only advertising on a major global people platform, mention no names, it's the same as essentially being like one of those billboards on the side of the road, right? Everybody has to go past it regardless. Don't just say they're interested in it. Don't just say that they're engaged with it. Don't just say they're going to do anything about it. But they've got to go past it to get to where they want to go. And it's the same. It's not enough to be present. Are you actually really engaging with those drivers? Are you really, is the message significant enough for them to want to take an action? And that action could just be a question. It could just be a comment. It's an opening for a conversation. It doesn't mean that it will translate to, oh, I've seen that advert, I'll apply. So you've got to think.
That advert might be really annoying, Glenn.
Yeah. And then
it might not speak to me. It might be, classic.
Exactly.
Whatever. It is. It's fascinating because if we're not investing in the communities that we want to draw from and we want to attract towards us, then shouldn't be surprised that you get nothing from those diverse groups of people, right? Whatever your sort of your plan is, or your strategy is, or your goals for having more diverse talent. If you're not in the game, you're going to get nothing. There ain't anything coming back, right? And from that.
Exactly. And with the greatest respect, your one singular templated advert doesn't mean to say it's going to appeal to a diverse group of people. To your point around making that connection through networks, actually really being part of a community of people that you perhaps feel it would be beneficial to be part of that community. Therein, you may find talent that you want to hire, and look at it less of a kind of a tick box exercise. So what kind of job boards give us the most diverse talent? Again, it's just kind of to be just seen in there isn't enough. You need to be contributing, active, vocal. You need to say something more than we've got a job opportunity.
Well, and the message has got to tie up all the way through, because people are discerning and they can tell when there's a disconnect, right? It's like, oh, you say this, but there's nothing translating over here. And also, you don't have to pick all. You can be selective, right? You can be selective. If you're a tech company and you want more women in your organization, then focus on women, get involved in communities, or get members of your team or some of your leadership to be out there and active and supporting and mentoring people in that space, right? Equally, people of color, same thing, right? Pick a group, work with a gender group, right? Whatever, and I think there has to be it has to be. I don't like using it because it's an overused word, authentic, but it has to resonate. It has to be, oh, you're saying this here and you're consistent about it in these different places across your business, and therefore, okay, to me, that hangs true and I like it, right? Whereas you talk about it, you talk a good game over here, but it's not, that's not the experience that I'm hearing about on the ground or on Glassdoor.
Exactly. I think there's always the why and the what, right? So, you as a business may go, okay, we would like to increase the diversity within our workforce because we appreciate that one, it's important to us. Two, we appreciate the benefits of it. If I'm there and I'm perhaps somebody that you're talking to, my first question is, why do you want to do that beyond it being something you feel compelled to do? And if I'm honest, what's in it for me? And what is that environment I'm going into? If you're telling me already that your environment is not particularly diverse, well, I don't want to be a statistic that makes your business look good. What are you doing about the environment, the culture to change? And that is something that you have to be, as a company, you have to be very transparent around and be prepared to be challenged on it as well. So I think there's a lot to think around when you think about, let's say, that broad kind of statement of wanting and feeling compelled to hire diverse talent, and then it feeds into your kind of recruitment process. Are you set up if that person wants to apply for a job? Are they just going to go through a standard recruitment process? That everybody's going. So you've done all the really good work to position yourself. They're interested. They apply, and then they get, "Oh, hi, Sehaam. Thanks for your application. We'll be back to you in 72 hours."
What?
It's done.
It is, and it reminds me definitely the space that we're in with courses and the experience of leaders onboarding. That can be actually one of the trickiest areas, is getting people comfortable in that space. And what I've learned to do is to really have a very personal approach to every person who comes on Leaders Who Coach, and I will pick up individual conversations ad hoc, because I'm watching, how easy, how people are coming online and whether they're progressing or whether they look like they got stuck. And one guy said to me, "Thank you, Sehaam, for picking up the phone and talking to me, because if you hadn't, I probably would have dropped out." And so on a recent cohort, I've got 100% still going through, and we're halfway through, and they're tracking along really nicely together. And that takes effort. And it's the exact same thing with recruitment. If you aren't prepared to do something different and pick up the phone and make yourself available, you may lose some fantastic talent who just walk away. What, I put the effort in. What's coming back at me? Not very much. Okay.
100%. It lends itself into the fact that, are you open to feedback? Are you actively seeking feedback? And not all feedback is going to be positive. And for me, some of the more challenging feedback is often the most valuable. Now, perhaps some companies might be tempted to dismiss that as a disgruntled individual that didn't get the job. Well, no, actually, that's quite a narrow viewpoint. I think if somebody feels compelled to give you feedback, you need to engage with them, try and understand it, and certainly take the learnings from it, and be able to kind of, have that interaction, that conversation. I think for me, the times where I've, kind of received, kind of slightly more challenging or negative feedback, it's resulted in an opportunity to learn. So, and yes, sometimes emotion gets involved in that. When somebody's disappointed, they're disappointed, but actually, perversely, that's a good thing, right? If they're actually disappointed about not getting a job with you, that means there is something there that they really see aspirationally and where they can fulfill their ambition. So that in itself, I think, is, you can take a kind of negative and turn it into a positive, but you've got to be prepared to have that conversation with them and really understand, the kind of drivers beyond that feedback as well.
Well, if they felt strongly enough to give you feedback, to even be bothered to write something to you, then
100%.
they actually had an emotional attachment to you or your brand, but were disappointed in some way, and that speaks to the experience, right? So that is definitely an opportunity.
Because people are investing their time, right? It's kind of it's an investment of time on both sides. So you don't invest that sort of time without generally wanting to get the positive end result.
Right. And I think just to sort of bottom line this, it's about being intentional, right? Rather than applying a hit and miss, or thinking that, the PR exercise is sufficient to tell people how wonderful your organization is, or your culture is, or your leadership is, but actually be a lot more intentional. Don't try and do everything. Be selective, get that right, and then look to add or, focus on another part. As you grow, right?
I mean, you're right. You don't have to do the kind of big bang employer brand piece immediately and kind of, really overinvest. It needs to be intentional and actually build the employer brand on the kind of almost organic journey your business is going on. So it looks a lot more kind of natural, actually, and less contrived. which is another thing that people look for, right? We're all consumers.
Cheaper too, potentially.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
I mean,
because once
or redirecting your budget into stuff that is, much more grassroots, much more where it's going to deliver results, right?
Definitely. I always maintain, put your people in front of your brand and you'll always do well, because they are the best possible ambassadors and advocates for your business.
Yeah.
Because they can talk about their lived experience of being part of your business. And I think that always resonates a lot with potential, kind of interested applicants and such.
Yeah. I hope that's given people a flavor of how leaders can get more involved. And it's not rocket science. It's just about being genuine and looking for opportunities where there's a natural affinity or a draw, right? There's a connection somehow, or something that you're passionate about as a team, and where you want to be more involved, have more of a voice, and so on. And that can be a really natural draw of the right people, of a culture and a mindset that you want as part of your team.
100%. And we'll probably get into this next week and week 3 as well. Often I find it's also moving from a service to a kind of valued business partner, and actually moving from the subjective assessment of potential people you want to hire to the objective assessment of people you want to hire. So moving from that, that kind of like, that those kind of comments on perhaps, and we spoke about it yesterday, right? If you're in an interview and the interviewer is in kind of sell and tell mode, so they're selling the business, they're telling you how great the business is. In that respect, exactly, what do you expect me to do other than agree?
Right.
There's no element, there's no area there for me to kind of input into. Right. And then perhaps the interviewer comes off at the interview and it's just like, yeah, they didn't really seem particularly engaged.
They didn't have much to say.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't really comment much. You're just like, well, so yeah, we'll get into this, but yeah, moving from the subjective to the objective. And when you move to the objective, you're listening more,
right,
and asking more questions.
Right.
In the subjective, you're probably selling and telling more.
And although the title of the next one is about, who do you recruit first, recruitment or HR, which function do you bring into the business first? It is going to also focus on how you as a leader within your organization are showing up in those conversations. And that might help you decide, because for some businesses, you might be able to decide where actually the next step is an HR person. But you may find that actually you need more of a recruitment function just because of what you're trying to achieve within your business, right? So, but leaders are definitely still very much involved in that. And so, yes, if like I say to people, if you are tactical and all of your conversations are very tactical, that's what people out, in all your conversations are going to pick up. But if you are spending time being more strategic and having strategic conversations, that's what's going to surface more in your conversations, and that's what people take away. So it's the exact same thing, right? You can talk at people, but if you're not listening,
100%,
you're in trouble.
Listening is key. Listening is key.
For sure.
No, active listening is key.
And asking a ton of questions, right?
Yeah.
I love questions. So just to wrap up then, if you are, if these are challenges that you're having within your business and you are facing a period of growth and you're having to recruit people within your organization, or you got to a certain size and you're like, okay, we now want to scale, but you don't have a coherent way of, as a leader, being involved in that process, then do take a look at Glenn's course, Talent for Leaders. It's specifically built for leaders understanding how they can get involved, how they can show up, how they can work with their team collaboratively. And so if you're on a drive to do that, and I hear a lot of people, Glenn, saying, I'm involved in recruitment, but I'm really not comfortable, or even HR people saying, our leaders don't know how to show up in these sessions. They don't know how to show up in interview. They don't know how to really get involved. That's the course.
100%. And that's why, kind of in conversation with you, I was inspired to write the course. It's, you know, it's instructional, it's informative, it's challenging. And I think it lays a really, it will allow a leader to implement a really good foundation that they can then scale from. And within the course, what I'm not doing is telling, right? It's really kind of informing, and empowering, and offering insight, at different stages of that kind of that particular process. And it implements all of some of the conversations, questions that I've had from working with startups and scale ups. Some of the stuff that just, you know, you possibly won't even think of, it might not even be on your radar,
right?
When it really should be. So yeah, and it'll be good fun.
It
good
is
fun as well.
Well, for the experience that you have, Glenn, I think, and the amount that we laugh, I think that goes without saying. Totally qualified on that one. So yeah, do check that out, and reach out if you are interested in Glenn's course. So next week we're back with part 2. Part 2. And yeah, so really getting into the question of what's going on in your organization. What do you really need at the point that you're at? And all the different roles that leaders are playing in startups and scale-ups, right? And how we can bring that together, and be more coherent and more strategic in that. So yeah, join us. That's Tuesday next week at 1:00 UK time. Catch the replay of this one. Please do send in any questions or whatever. Reach out to Glenn. You can catch him on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and happy to answer any questions. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If wherever you're watching this and it's not YouTube, you can just search for Better Conversations on YouTube. You'll find us. Do subscribe. We've got a ton of other conversations, interviews, resources there for leaders at various different stages, and that is an ever-growing resource to you. So please do take a look at that. Anything else that we need to say, Glenn?
Well, the only thing I was saying is I'm really kind of looking forward to next week, and I will be very balanced in my view as a kind of recruitment professional. I completely understand the value of HR. I just think that there is an important kind of decision point for leaders to make at the moment, given the change in the market. It's an important question to ask. You know, most companies default, I think, to kind of HR first and foremost. But actually, depending on what your objectives are, recruitment could well be your first and more critical hire. So yeah, looking forward to discussing that next week.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday.
See you next week. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.